Going to move on here now and make sure that we have our next discussion about hybrid logistics. So this is where I'm going to showcase a lot of what's actually happening in the arena of education right now on a national basis. So you're grounded in some more of the stats of what's going on. Okay. All right, so what we're looking at right now is hybrid logistics. So you heard a little bit this morning from Michael about what he called the High Flex program. This is sort of similar as a discussion, and to ground you in where we think the market is going based on all of the research, like what's going to happen with education down the road now that so many schools have they're in up to their eyeballs now with technology. They've all rolled out massive numbers of devices. It's a totally different landscape than it was just a year and a couple months ago. So the total spend in the last year on technology in K-12 was $35.8 billion. It was an increase of $7.5 billion in a single year. This is the largest jump we've ever seen. So that little piece of the pie is out of that total revenue bucket. Normally $584 billion separate on instructional services and support, $52 billion on construction. We think the construction budgets are not going to be as big in the new year. People don't need to build new buildings usually. They might need to retrofit, and some are deciding that the centralization into single buildings is not working. They need to have neighborhood outlets. So going from mega store concept to smaller store, and even having tiny little grocery sort of stores in the neighborhoods. Retail outlets in California are getting swooped up by a lot of school districts. So what this means is that money was a lot of the CARES Act 1. It doesn't include any of the CARES Act 2 or the new Relief Act. So the amount of money in those was X amount in CARES Act 1, much larger in CARES Act 2 by a factor of 10. And then really large in the third one. So we don't think money is going to be a problem. There's going to be a mad scramble to make sure you get your share. But I don't really think any school district in America right now can say money's a really big problem. So I want to say that essentially, hardware and software had the biggest round of increase. Hardware was a $4.5 billion jump. And major software systems, D2L, those kinds of systems, 6.1 billion and up by over 900 million. We were expecting that to be bigger, but a lot of districts, when they first weighed in to the arena, they're Google Docsing. They're not all the way to an LMS yet. They don't actually understand really how you need to be organized and what it means for the traffic pattern and the lost files, can't find this over here, whatever that goes on at the teacher level and student level. We expect it to jump again another 400 million. These numbers were projected before CARES Act 2 in December. So we know these numbers are right on. It could be a lot more in total increase. And then in terms of digital curriculum, 13.1 billion in 2020, up by 2.1 billion, huge jump. Paper resources, again, down because people didn't really need paper. It's hard to distribute when kids are not in the building. And then we're expecting that to jump again by 2 billion. That'll be a big jump this year because one of the first things schools are realizing that are new to the fray is that they can't possibly expect teachers to build everything. They need to actually anchor in their curriculum map some things that are professional grade that can be accessed independently. And ClassLink was showing you a lot of those resources. There's thousands and thousands. So as you get more into them and discover them, you start to sort of lay those out in your map, which is a huge teacher time saver for what they have to do to build out every single lesson aligned to your standards. The difference between the consumer side and the K-12 purchase is that K-12 was up, but the consumer market took off in March, April, May last year. Massive amount of parents and grandparents and even students themselves finding digital curriculum online and deciding, maybe I don't really need school. Maybe I can just sort of knit together all my little things that I need to learn and figure this out. Plus, there's a lot of companies that K-12's never heard of that do that service directly to consumers. They're not necessarily providing teachers, maybe only chatbots, but they're providing a full map against state standards of everything you need to learn, and you can sort of navigate and just buy the subscription. So we also did another survey in January, good mix, 50-50 administrative level to teacher level. And these are the things we found. 15% of students have opted out of re-enrollment to traditional public education. This is such a big number in 1 year that we didn't believe it. However, when we looked at who responded and the data points on it, we were like, okay, this is real. The original big national survey said 3.6% had opted out. So that was September, October, and we closed that out. So then in the fall, a lot of school districts were expecting kids back. Like this is what Dallas ISD told us. They had shy 13,000 kids didn't re-enroll, but they were expecting them to come back when school was back physically. They didn't necessarily, all of them. So this is a real number. So I'm going to talk more about that in a second. So the other things that happened is that 35% of students during the pandemic, and this is continuing in places that are still shut down, are not showing up online or not showing up consistently. This is a really big problem for schools and has a lot to do with your model. Students who sometimes have the wrong materials distributed to them, 50%. This is why we wanted to showcase ClassLink and other companies in the space, D2L, Blackboard, because how you manifest yourselves in terms of the user interface, user experience is a really big deal. So students who can't easily navigate online systems, again, this is a little bit about the student agency. They're not familiar with navigating this way. They're familiar with navigating their way through a door and arriving in the classroom. They're not familiar with navigation necessarily in major systems. Students who have achievement loss, this is the biggie. 51% nationally have some achievement loss. This is devastating. And a lot of states now have their districts fighting with the state level and legislatures on high stakes testing because they don't think they can survive it and it's going to hurt them. Teachers who can't easily navigate and use online systems and need more training, of course, 30%, although a lot of training went on last summer. It was majestic. A lot of training happened like right when the pandemic started, just suddenly using in certain software systems and courseware went from 0 to 100% like overnight. So unable to easily personalize learning for students in the changed conditions, this is 47%. And I have to say, this has a lot of my attention as a researcher, because if you can't personalize for real, even on pace, disrupting the whole groupness that you're in, you can't compete with the consumer markets. And the real fracturing of the market is going in that direction. I showed you that consumer market purchase behavior. That's what's happening nationally, and the expectations for pro grade user interface, user experience that is 100% customized. Like when you shop on Amazon, it will give you recommendations engines of other things that you could possibly purchase based on what you're currently searching for. That's the level of expectancy that's now growing on the consumer side. So the teachers overly sidetracked into repetitive distribution and collection of assignments, resources, communication. This is a really biggie, 40%. Responding that this is a biggie for them. And you have to look at this as no time on the student while you're doing that. So in other words, you've disrupted the direct instruction, the attention units that a teacher can give to students individually by now pulling them into doing all this other stuff. So the percentage of teachers feeling overwhelmed or burnt out, naturally, 74%. So where we're at right now, 2019, we were at public traditional education, 73%, 27% had opted out. Now that included charters, which are technically public, right? So 6 of the states don't actually require you to register anywhere. You're just an opt-outer. So you're homeschooling, you're doing where you're, out in the wilds of learning or whatever. But this was a big number. This was very concerning. When we were on the road, we were talking about this all the time. And people were shocked, right? Like, that's not what the feds say. Well, the feds, like I said, don't track many of the states, and they can't necessarily really get the whole numbers from all the private schools. So in 2020, we went from that, we jumped up to 3.6%. The early survey in January, it showed 15%. So we're somewhere now between 33.6 and 42% have opted out of traditional public for one of the options, charters, privates, or homeschools. Now, those all have, in that bucket, are also online. The other thing that's also happened is that online education is 20% even for the publics. So 20%, when you want to go back into full in building, 20% of your population doesn't want to come back. So those are people that you're always going to have to service fully online. So people are setting up 2 rails, unless they're Michael Stein. And then they have like a converged model, which is the hybrid logistics model. He calls it high flex. Very wise. Because from here on out, you're looking at a fracturing of the physicality of your causing instruction. So parents are still afraid. They don't want to come back. It's about half the population. The other half really wants it back and they want it all normal. And our experience is, this was true before the pandemic, the people who want exact normal, traditional public brick and mortar manufacturing model, moving kids' grades and classes all in the same pace, they want that because it's what they had. And they're successful in life. So it's a lot of the wealthier districts that really want this. And they want the same for their kids. They don't want anything different because maybe that'll disrupt the success of their own children. The real innovators tend to be the smaller, less wealthy arenas. And all of that just came in during the pandemic. Pretty much everybody got on board with devices for every student. So we're dealing with a revision of space and time use. Like I said, a fractured map. And on the space side, you have people sectioning buildings. You can only go in one entrance at a time, and you got to only go in and out this side, alternating the buildings. Overnight, you work on, disinfecting everything. Then there's this new idea of house rooms, like the big home rooms, and we call them houses or commons areas, like Glamoursville ISD calls them commons areas. A house room is kind of like Harry Potter's world, multi-ages assigned into one major space, socially distanced. But you're in there all the time, and then you're flighted out and you come back after a class. But classes are not where you always are. You're studying asynchronously on campus, or you're at home, but you're attached to this house. And when a class is triggered, then you come in. This is sort of known as the Uberization. It is the high watermark of hybrid logistics. So, of course, all these other things happening, like I said before, social distancing, remote, micro schools, taking over retail space, one neighborhood, isolate that area. And then pods, parents over development. That's a big deal in California, people converting garages and that kind of thing. So then you have, people still on the traditional schedule with or without video, remote, hybrid, that kind of thing. And then you have this thing happening on all of the maps of time, which is wild. We pulled tons of these in our research over the summer. It was like, we're going to have AB weeks for these grades and AB days in those where you're physically in the building, and then you're online, and then you're physically in the building. And the next week is the other 3 days, and it's different by grade, and it's kind of wild. And then you have staggered starts over the year and altered daily block schedules. You're not in the Carnegie unit anymore. You got 120 minutes for math, but you can only be 20 minutes on the Zoom meeting. So the rest of it has to be asynchronous, which is very disruptive for all the lesson planning. It's kind of the Wild West. And then, like I said, the auto cohorting idea of a completely disrupted whole group model. Senator Howard Stevenson was on with us early, I think it was last April, saying, we're watching the death of whole group. To compete with the consumer models, we're watching the death of whole group. And that's when Learning Council started talking about the manifestation of letting students move on pace and then auto cohorting them when they hit a trigger point to calendar the class. That's coming to schools near you, and it's one of the hottest topics in the market right now. So the impact on teachers, this is a big one for us. Teaching from home, many teachers still have to do this because they're at risk, and using video conferences in an alien way. And a lot of them feel like they need to be on all the time, like they're on a movie, like they're on TV right now. They have to be on. So the difference with that versus being in a classroom where maybe you just gave some instructions and then everybody was working on their own out in the classroom, and then you sort of wandered around. And it's a very different model for them. They really only in real life were lecturing for short bursts, and the rest of the time was discussion and other things. But that's not happening at the level that it used to happen when you were physically together. So that's a major concern for people who are actually running learning right now, to look at the reality of what's happening minute to minute. And then you have, of course, teachers are teaching in the classroom, classes on campus, but not doing the online. That's separate. So then you have frontline, backline teaching teams. Whereas frontline is the person actually administering the learning. The backline is building the railroad tracks to have all the lesson plans in order. that worked in a lot of places. So people want to retain that. That's an interesting idea. And then there's teachers that were actually assigned to be roving. Like they went out, they were assigned to a neighborhood. They went out to physically visit the pods, socially distanced. And then direct instruction on demand online was big, right? There were places that were saying teachers were getting calls till 11 o'clock at night. That's why they needed to get them separate phones so they could turn off their phone once in a while and still have their personal phone on so grandma could call, but not have their work life interrupting their entire life. And that was just the nature of what was happening in the last year. So one of our own opinion leaders is Kurt Madden. He's now retired. He just left Fresno Unified. But he said some things early on about not having a captive audience anymore. And I want you to think with that, because you don't. You think you do. But what's happening in the outside world of the consumer market is really a tidal wave of change. So a teacher really needs to start thinking of themselves as a coach or a mentor, not as the purveyor of lecture. And maybe not even the discipline if you just aggregate your structure internally. So they're not having to run a class all the time and all the permutations of the eyeballs and the who's in what seat all the time. They convene like a meeting. Corporate America has been doing this for 25, 30 years. Everybody's in their cubicles or their offices, and then they reserve meeting space, and then they have a meeting and they go back to their asynchronous work. That's the model that's emerging as the most efficacious way to cause physical convergence, not lose that real human interaction, but use it in a very efficient way for exactly what a teacher is really needed for, their human purveying of some things and leading discussion and that kind of thing. So they had to work in 3 different arenas: traditional with PPE, masks, plexiglass, blended and remote, and distance only. So we developed in the last year with the Edu Jedi Leadership Society this model. I know it kind of looks like an eye chart, and I have other eye charts for you today. It's going to be interesting. You have all these things, way more than any other industry has in terms of complexity of technology. I honestly don't think Amazon is this complicated. It's just massive. Hardware, servers, where's your enterprise network, and blah, blah, blah. And then at the top, you have your portals and your paywalls for people to give you money for things, and, parents buying stuff. And then you've got this new thing emerging called hybrid logistics scheduling, which is multi-level calendaring and ways to, surface calendar to an individual and send them their notification. You're doing a class, blah, blah time. You can come in via this link, or you can arrive physically. Then this other new thing called sovereign identity and rostering. So basic rostering has been whole group oriented, but now the accumulation to the individual identity of things about that individual. What's their favorite color? How are they doing in this subject? What's their reading level? All those other things accumulating into that identity. So the identity itself triggers recommendations engines about what they need, is a new thing emerging on the scene. And then, of course, access management and security. So you have a lot happening in that sort of back end, pure tech arena that's new. And then they're also using a lot of outside services, particularly the smaller districts, and having to deal with things like integrations. Superintendent walks in and says, I want all this data. And you're like, well, it's in 57 systems. So don't know how we're going to do that without paying somebody $1 million to integrate everything. So that's the thing. So then you get down into the user level stuff. You got student information systems, learning management systems, your grading badging system, testing, facilities management, your professional development platform, financial, HR, chatbots. One of the hottest things in the last year. Everybody wants to buy chatbotting and live teaching on demand, maybe as a service to the district itself with its own teachers on a rotation, or hiring outsiders. And then you've got all the office suite stuff that goes on. And then below that, you have all the individual applets like ClassLink was showing you. It's like a ton of different companies with courseware and ebook collections and just little scraps of textbooks and things to teach about this, and a photo of a volcano and blah, blah, blah. Massive array of things out there. And they tended to be a disparate map grade to grade. And people are trying to rein that in now from all the districts. And now they're turning their attention to that gray block, which is the workflow and routing between them, because that's usually lesson planning. Teacher goes, step 1, log in over here. Step 2, read this. Step 3, do that. But the workflow for the individual student is not normally thought through all the way. It's like, okay, where was that file? The link is broke. What's happening? And you just disrupted your learning because people can't find stuff. So workflow is becoming a really hot topic. So up in the far right, you have this thing called auto cohorting, auto distribution of resources, auto calendaring, and live interaction that is very intentional, not an all the time thing. This is a new idea, and we're calling it hybrid model architecture for personalized learning, without being too definitive, because usually schools and districts don't really like to be told what to do. They like to concentrate on like what's going to be right for them, which is the proper way to be. So the screen learning truth right now is that the optimum, I always like to cite this study, is 4.5 hours per day per student. I want to qualify that. That's active. Active learning is different than passive. So the optimum of passive is 4.5 hours. That's like ingesting a video, reading a digital book, not actually typing in your essay, chatting up other kids and doing a project together online, playing a game together online. So please differentiate between active digital and passive. Because when people talk about screen learning, they think that all screen all the time is bad. That's not true. Active screen is different than passive screen. So you should have a 40-60% split. 40% of all hours in school during the quote unquote school day, you should take about 2.5 hours of that to be passive, no more. All the rest of the time should be active, which is heavy on teachers. They need to think with, I'm only going to lecture for 10 minutes because that's all I have of that 2.5 hours for this day. And the rest of the time I need kids to be doing things, like even if it's at home, painting something or doing a laundry experiment, whatever they got to do. So the big question right now for K-12 is really this question, and they don't normally think of it this way, but it's how am I using space? How am I using my people? Am I using them at the best effect for their humanity? Or am I overwhelming them with lots of stuff? What is the workflow of all this from the student view, from the teacher view, from the administration view? And then how am I using time? Because like I said, teachers were getting calls at 11 o'clock at night. Maybe there's something in that. And there's also something in the fact that some of the students used to be really quiet in the back of the room, never said anything. Suddenly, digitally, they're exceeding, all expectations. They're chatting everybody up on chat, and they're doing really terrifically, and they don't want to come back. Well, that's just telling you that we're moving into a time when suddenly we have the opportunity to be something, the right thing for everyone. And what is the model? What is that real model? Because it's certainly not the 200-year-old traditional whole group manufacturing model. That's not going to stand. So the problems that I pointed out earlier, and I asked Michael about this in the first half hour, was, are you seeing traffic problems? Because this is what we're seeing. Live teaching plus virtual teaching is hard. Even when the camera's tracking you, it's hard. Audio is hard in those environments. Then they're distributing and collecting all assignments. Whereas when you're virtually in the classroom, they'd walk in and they'd hand you something, or it was easier. You'd hand out paper a lot of times. And then managing all the curriculum resources, and then even all the way down to managing all the individual communications and pop-ups and everything that's happening across the day. And you tend to not remember as a teacher that, little Johnny or someone in the class didn't speak up for the last 2 weeks. What happened? They're not engaged. You tend to forget that because you're getting pelted so much. So what this means for teachers is that when we move to a point, and I know this is kind of an eye chart, but when we move to a point where we're really thinking with each child their own resources adapted to them on their own pace, then we're looking at something that's nothing like whole group. Because right now, when we say personalized in most places, we mean slightly tweaking what we're already doing for the whole group on pace for this one student who has an audio difficulty or some other learning impairment. We're talking about different things, which then ups the traffic by orders of magnitude. That's not really a human job, but technology can do it very easily. It does it every day in the retail space. So we're in the middle of this changing basic organizing principle. And I don't know everything, but I'm bringing it up so people can start talking about it. And that is, we used to be in this whole group, grades, classes, courses, pyramidal bureaucracy, students at the bottom. And we're mutating right now to try to deliver in multiple modalities and hoping to get to real personalization. Like I said, there's different definitions of personalization. It's really individualization, because personalization in software vernacular means something I do for myself, like picking out my blue hair on my avatar. But in the digital space, it can go way further than that. Like, what does this really mean, this mutation moment? So we think where it's going, because we're watching all the other markets, is that learning will be mostly asynchronous in a distributed service model, and you'll be extra liminal, which means you won't think of yourselves in the limits of your buildings and the people in them. You'll think of yourselves as, I can't find a science teacher to teach this one grade. I'm going to use one from 3 states away online. And then maybe send in a paraprofessional to do the experiments and stuff, watched over by this person who's way far away. Thinking that way is what corporate America has been doing for a long time. And the other thing that's happened is that algorithmic live teaching intersection is coming. It's the Uberization of learning based on cohort pace. And that reality makes your whole physical structure of where people are at any time irrelevant. And because now you can focus attention on those moments when teaching is occurring in the traditional sense. And the rest of the time, when they're not doing that, they're paying attention to the students who are too slow. They're like, what's happening with you? You're not moving along in math. What don't you get? Oh, I can help you with that. Let's figure this out, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly that kid is zooming forward. So we played a game called, the Twister game back in Dallas before the pandemic to show how that might work, because we were already thinking about it before the pandemic started to happen. And that was really fun, essentially showing how people would be in a main room and then flighting in and out and watching the pace of other students as they moved through the things and where the teachers were, and they were coming in and out, and then they were going over here, and then there were other people helping with other things like setting up the experiments in advance, because they just got a notification that the science experiment is going to come up, run in there and pull out all the volcano stuff so their volcano experience is ready. And then it was all sort of catered to. The way the game run, you can pull this game down right now from the Edu Jedi group, was very interesting for people because they've never thought of deconstructing whole group in this way so they could manifest a better experience for every student. So essentially, if you want to get that game, it has instructions for, I think you have to have at least 14 to 20 people play. You can play it online with Zoom. We did the other day. You just use like little markers in the Zoom pins. So you can put a stamp where you are, and then you remove your stamp and put it in the next place as you move around the board. So what we're really talking about here, and this is why we're having this hybrid logistic conversation, is that the teacher-centric versus student-centric models are top of mind for most leaders right now. They want to move away from pure grade and class structure. They want to personalize, but they don't know how to do it at scale. So a much higher level of asynchronous learning has already occurred. People are starting to see that what that means for how they execute on learning is a different life for the teacher, who now isn't a lecturer all the time. They are a manager of every individual student grasping concepts that they need to grasp. So the full digital transition, we think, is a moment where maybe it isn't that model I just showed you, but it's a different model where it unburdens teachers. So the focus on unburdening is really where the Learning Council is coming from because of all the other things that we're looking at. But individualized based on pace is interesting to most schools and districts because being truly competency-based is really hard. Really, truly being competency-based would necessitate that every student's on a different pace, and not let's just slow down pace because these students aren't getting it. Because if you do that, you're not going to make your test dates because you're still whole group. So that model's never really made sense to me because it's not a real individualized model. It's sort of trying to be competency based, but not really. So the leverage of human qualities of teachers is where you need your attention to go next as leaders, to say to yourself, what is the finest quality of the humans and how much can I lean on technology to do the rest? Can I distribute most of the knowledge I need to, and then take these excellent individuals that are teachers to really help people where they really need it? What if I took off all the running of a classroom and the discipline off of them? What would happen? So that's what we're putting out there in front of you. So how lessons are done right now is standards, frameworks, academics, little widgets that you got to figure out where to put on. People put them on the plotting calendar and they end up with a PDF, a spreadsheet, or a Word document, a Google Doc, somewhere in some file. Teachers have to go check. Then the teachers go to step C, which is I got to build my lesson plans. And what do? They look at the calendar of the plots of all the when I got to teach what. And then they look at their own calendar of when we're actually in school and what hour do I have and which 20 minutes can I be on Zoom. And then they got to plot a lesson. So they're looking over here and they're looking over here and then they're making a lesson. This is a lot of work and it's duplicated across every single teacher in every single district in America. So the creation of a model curriculum, a viable curriculum is what most districts are doing right now. They're trying to get to a point where they have that totally locked in. And the reason they are is because they really want to get to personalization. So the way that would be done in hybrid learning and hybrid logistics is you would move to being able to check off the moments when live lecturing would occur. Okay. So rather than we're all together all the time as a precept, you would necessarily have a moment where you marked it. This is the lecture whole group moment. The rest is asynchronous. That way you can preset it to auto trigger when certain students arrive at that point. So that would look like this. Student starts down here. They're told do some pre-reading, study, and then they go to the next point that they're supposed to be. Oh, that's an intersection point with other students. I'm the first one here. So I have a red light because the teacher said it that 10 kids have to arrive to this point, meaning they did their reading already before it triggers the class. Once the cohort is full, so I'm told as a student, go study something else or back in, read some more. Once it's triggered, you get a green light notification pops up for you and it says, go to class 101B. If you're virtual, click this link. So you do that. And now when that's done for that half hour, 45 minutes or an hour, you move on to the next thing on your check sheet, right? So you're moving through your lessons on your own. This is a totally different model than most people think with, and it's super fun for students. It's what we're paying attention to right now because of the drive towards personalization to remain competitive. So how that would look is a lot of logistics, kids coming in online, kids running around the building. It looks very chaotic. I've been to schools that are doing close approximations of this, and it does look chaotic, but it looks super fun. Kids are on bean bags with their iPads up in the air doing their reading, and other ones are over here doing a project, and teacher looks like they're handling some individual student in the corner, and it's a fun looking model. So what does it mean for teachers in schools? What does it mean for your space? What does it mean for the teacher's role? And how is it all going to work? So Learning Counsel with the EduJedi is trying to do a demo project to show how this would work live with algorithmic logic. So that would be calendars that's subset into segments, subset into weekly programs, daily rotations, daily blocks, auto cohorting within steps, and how that would manifest. And we're going to look for schools fairly soon here to run the modeling to see how it actually works at a major scale. If you're not a member of EduJedi already, you need to be, so that you can be part of those discussions and also all the other discussions about definitions of terms and the new experience standards and new model of instructional design. We're going to be holding all those calls all summer long. So you now have a right to the hybrid logistics badge since you listen to me talk about all this, so you understand the major concepts in where we see the future map of the structure of schools going. Now I want to invite Kendall Howell, who's with Blocksi, to share with us for just a minute what's happening with them and this new technology. Kendall, I want to make sure I can hear you. There you are.
Hey, Lonnie.
Hi, nice to have you again.
All right. Can you see my presentation there?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you again. Excited to be a part of all the great presentations and discussions that are happening today. Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you to the Learning Council and all of you joining. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Kendall Howell. I am the Customer Success Manager with Blocksi. So just want to quickly, at a high level, introduce you to our Blocksi solution, which is an in and out of school content filtering and classroom management system. So it's that all-in-one solution for Chromebooks and as well Windows devices. Our company is headquartered out of Palo Alto, California, but we do have employees that are spread out across the state as well as international. I myself am joining here from the East Coast in South Carolina. So Blocksi is purely cloud-based. It's an app extension that's pushed directly out from the Google Admin Console or MSI file for via Azure Active Directory or local directory for all of those Microsoft devices. The installment and rollout of Blocksi is very instantaneous and seamless to deploy across your district, even if you're a large school district. So whether you're hybrid, fully remote, or in person, our solutions can help. So some of the features that are listed here, we began our cloud-based content filtering back in 2011, and our filtering extends to in and out of school, as well as filtering for the classroom. So we have many filtering options across the web and YouTube available. That's including web category-based filtering that helps you be SIPA and COPA compliant very easily. We have customizable block and allow lists, application filtering, keyword filtering, and as well granular YouTube filtering. So this helps give you deeper controls to really secure that YouTube environment to ensure it's being used as a safer educational platform. Our classroom management system has been in the market since 2016, and this allows teachers to monitor the student screens, push out content, restrict certain sites, or lock the students down to specific content, run safe, secure testing environments, lock down browsers, close down tabs on students' devices, and so much more. It's really designed to make that classroom filled with devices much more manageable for the teachers. There is also video conferencing built into the teacher dashboard for any conferencing needs as well. Our solution also offers both district-wide web browser and YouTube analytics for admins and these same insightful analytics to those teachers per their class sessions. It identifies the sites visited by users, the time spent on the site, search engine keywords. So even if they're not clicking on certain things, but they're searching and looking up specific keywords, it identifies that. YouTube videos and a lot more analytics there. Also, we have our student safety. So that's going to monitor across all of Gmail, all of G Suite. It scans and detects instances that are related to self-harm, suicide, threats, toxicity, cyberbullying. Our alerting system allows you to as well configure your own specific types of alerts so that you can build those and customize those based on categories that we've provided, student safety, and specific keywords that you configure yourself to be alerted on. Lastly, our anti-theft solution that can help keep an inventory of your devices and track any lost or stolen devices by pinpointing them on a Google map, so it identifies their last online known location and captures screenshots every 3 to 5 seconds of the activity going on that stolen or lost device. We can also engage the webcam to take actual live photos of where that device is. All these options can be disabled, but they are there available just to help your chances of recovery. So really quick, we do have 4 main dashboards here. That's going to be the admin, which houses the content filtering, web analytics, student safety, alert, anti-theft controls. The teacher dashboard, that's for teachers to monitor and manage their classrooms. the principal dashboard to access their analytics and student safety for the kids that they manage specifically. And then as well, the parent dashboard for outside of school hours. That's going to help the parents enforce bedtime, control certain times for social media, gaming, streaming. Parents also have access to an Android or iOS app that they can access the Blocksi Parent Dashboard from their phones. As far as pricing goes, we do offer very competitive pricing along with professional development services for your IT staff, coaches, teachers. We really want to ensure that they are beyond equipped to master and manage their dashboards with confidence. So we do give professional development at no extra charge there. So yeah, if you would like to schedule a demo, set up a free trial, receive pricing, or just more information about our solution, we would love to hear you. So please reach out to our sales manager, Sandy Rice, and we'll be happy to provide you with whatever you're looking for. I will provide Sandy's contact information in the chat, so be on the lookout for that and feel free to reach out. And then just lastly, also on behalf of Blocksi, we do want to thank all of you school districts. You're definitely in our thoughts, our prayers, our minds. You're our heroes in these trying times, and we really appreciate you. So all of your hard work does not go unnoticed. So thank you for all that you do.